What's going on, everybody? This is your tour guide around SWAC C Wells coming at you with another video today. Y'all make sure y'all lock in with us. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and become a part of the SWAC Talk family by becoming a member. 99 cents gets you a membership to the YouTube channel. We have special perks coming at you. We're going to be dropping special members only videos and shorts. I'm going to have rants and reactions to different things that I want to put there. So if you want to get everything, man, become a member of the Swag Talk crew for 99 cents and get down, man. And so we're going to still be bringing y'all a lot of stuff, swag smoke and everything like that, and all our normal videos. But we also bring y'all that membership tier. So get down with that. Check out the Facebook and Instagram, both Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. And now let's get on with the show, man. Let's do it.
Welcome to the show, see Bojo guy. Wednesday, Sundays, catch the ride. Football hoops, we breaking wide. Stats and facts, truth on high. SWAT talk where the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Hit the corner of the field, we strategize. Breaking the game down, no disguise. Play by play, we analyze. Eyewear sharp, we magnify. SWAT talk where the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays, heat, Sundays, ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays, heat, Sundays, ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel.
All right, everybody, what's going on, man? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk Show. We cover the swag inside and out, of course. I am your tour guide around the SWAC C Wells coming at you, and this is our week 5 recap, man. First full week of SWAC action, a lot of big games on the schedule. A lot of games went the way, it went the way some people expected. Some went the other way. But man, like I said, a time was had last night, man. Regardless of outcomes, man, I had a great time last night at the game. Even though we got stumped, I still had a good time, man. Talking to the Jackson State people and having a good time, man. So that's what this is all about: getting out and talking trash and having fun. Be nice to win, but you can't get it when you don't play well. But anyway, man, as you see, man, I'm still rocking my yard apparel brand shirts, man. It's going down. Hit that website, theyardapparelbrand.com, and check them out. And let's get on with it, man. Like I said, we're gonna go ahead and recap all these games. We'll start off with Alabama State going to Tallahassee and picking up their first win over the Rattlers since the Rattlers joined the SWAC. Um, Alabama State wins this one, going away 42-14. They jumped out to a 14-0 lead early in the second quarter, behind a Marcus Harris touchdown run and then a Jalen Jones touchdown pass from Andrew Body. Thad Franklin would get FAMU on the board with 3:12 left in the first half with a 4-yard run. The extra point was no good. Rattlers trailed at that point 14-6. Halftime score was also 14-6 before Jalen Jones caught his second touchdown of the night, this time from 39 yards out to put the Hornets up 21-6 after the extra point. Marcus Harris would get 2 more touchdowns in the second half from 3 yards out and 24 yards out, one in the third quarter, one in the fourth quarter, ultimately putting the Hornets up 35-6. Miles Campbell would get FAMU back on the board with 3:03 left in the game when he caught a 1 yard pass from RJ Johnson. 2 point conversion was good. Rattlers trailed 35-14 at that point. And then Gardner would get a 27-yard run for Bama State to basically slam the door. Extra point good, 42-14. Bama State is playing some really good football, man. They doing everything that they need. They worked the ground game in this one. Didn't really rely on the passing game at all. Only threw the ball 18 times Saturday. So they came in with an approach to run the football and were they successful. 299 yards on the ground, 42 carries, 7.1 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns on the ground. That's when you can run the ball like that, man. Anything else is extra. Um, Fam, you also had a good running night. They ran for 176 on 30 carries and 5.9 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. Um, the passing game for Bama State, 10-18, like I said, 106 yards, didn't really need it. Still had 2 touchdowns and still hasn't yet to throw interceptions. So that's still a good mark. FAMU had a touchdown pass, 133 yards to the air, 20 of 33. Also no interceptions. Rattlers got out game 405 to 309. Um, both teams had a fumble. Bama State did lose their fumble, but FAMU didn't lose theirs. 8 of 12 on third down for FAMU, and for Bama State, 8 of 12 on third down. Bama State 5. Bama State 8 of 12, FAMU 5 of 12 on third down. Um, FAMU was only 1 of 5 on fourth downs. That's always going to hurt you. Only 1 sack in this game, and that was from FAMU. But this was a Bama State ground game, man. The Hornets came in with running on their mind, and they got it done. Jamari Holtzclaw, 22 carries, 135 yards. Didn't get in the end zone, but still, that's a great day for him. Andrew Body had 40 yards. Also, Carl Legan had 35 yards. Kirkendall had 33 yards. Harris had 29 and 3 touchdowns. So what he didn't get in yardage, he got in points. And that's where it comes. Thad Franklin led FAMU with 75 yards on 13 carries and a touchdown. Like the neither quarterback really did a lot, but this was a game that was dictated on the ground. Jalen Jones still able to chip in 43 yards on 2 receptions for the Hornets and 2 touchdowns. So still an efficient game for him. And when everybody talks about the Bama State passing game, but they were able to get this done with the run game, and when they can do that, that makes them very dangerous. As they were able to go into Tallahassee, jump on the Rattlers early, and basically continue to do what they do. They never let up. Um, and when you have that, you can't beat that. Morris and Rudy John Luis have 5 tackles, along with Gordon and Lenore. They all have 5 tackles to lead the defense. And FAMU was led by Riles with 6 tackles. He also had 1.5 tackles for loss on the night. Um, and so now, the question for me is, where does FAMU go from here? They really are kind of in a tough spot. They basically struggle to get anything going in this game. And now, you take a loss that was a very bad loss at home, in a game that, some people, including myself, thought the game would be closer. Um, and it's almost like you didn't show up. So where do you go from here? Bama State, they continuing to hit their stride. Um, and honestly, the last 2 games they had against SWAC teams, they didn't necessarily feel the air up with footballs. They've been able to do it running the ball, and that to me makes this offense even more dangerous because now you know that if you try to stop them running the ball, they got a ton of receivers that can make some things happen. Um, I'm not quite ready to put them at the top of the league yet because I still think the defending champs are the top team in the league, regardless, until they get knocked off. And nothing I saw from Jackson State last night going to make me change my mind on where they belong in the pecking order. So, but Hornets continue to climb the ladder, and that's definitely going to be a big game when them 2 teams face off, provided they continue to um, both make their way forward. Speaking of the defending champs, the road to SWAC championship still runs through Jackson. Like I said, I'm a Southern fan. It's hard to say that, but it's the truth. And they playing good. They playing good football. And this game was honestly almost. This game was a whole lot like the championship game last year. Tight first half. Jackson State did have some mistakes. Southern, had some penalties in the first half that kind of cost it that interception in the red zone right before halftime. And then they had a roughing up kicker penalty, roughing the punter penalty, and Jackson State was able to hit a big pass for halftime to take the lead and the momentum. And Southern never came out with anything after that. Jackson State came out knowing what they needed to do. And just like last year, whenever the Tigers came out in the second half, they threw the punches to knock the other team out. And so that leaves Jackson State with a 38-13 victory. Kind of close to what I said. I think I said 35-17, so not that far off. Um, but this was a tight game in the first half. Southern scored first. Nathan Zimmer, 37-yard field goal. Then Denario Davenport did a front flip in the end zone, landed on his feet. Sitting behind that and watching that happen, man, it was crazy. 7-3 after the extra point. Zimmer would get a 41-yard field goal for Southern early in the second quarter, make the score 7-6. Trey Holly would get a 73-yard run for Southern, 13-7. And then Baszler would get a 33-yard field goal for Jackson State, 13-10. Then Dupree would catch a 51-yard pass from Morgan. Extra point good, 17-13. That came with 5 seconds before the half. That kind of was the backbreaker. If you look at the way it's being talked about in the news of the team and their morale. Second half, Davenport, a 3-yard run for Jackson State, 24-13. Terrell, 6-yard run for Jackson State, 31-13. And then remember the 82-yard pass from Morgan in the fourth quarter, 38-13 out the extra point. And that's that. Tigers 197 on the ground. Another really good running game, 42 carries, 4.7 yards per carry, 337 through the air, 21-32, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I know a lot of people are hard on Jacoby and Morgan, but when the guy can make his throws, he's tough to stop. He can, sometimes he can, get thrown off and maybe be inconsistent, but I still, like I said, I still feel like a lot of people get this guy a bum rap, and he showed basically after the midpoint of the second quarter. He started kind of finding his rhythm, and this was their first really good passing game Jackson State had all season. So you can't beat them. Over 500 yards of offense, 534, 7.2 yards per play. Southern 180 on the ground against a defense that's pretty stout to run the ball on. 5.6 yards per carry, 120 through the air, one interception, 10 or 20, finished with 300 yards even, 5.8 yards per play. Both teams were highly penalized. Both teams had 13 penalties in this game, 107 yards for Jackson State, 111 for Southern. You hate those penalties, but in a game like this, in a matchup like this, you gonna have that kind of stuff. And it's gonna kind of take a toll. There's always who can survive it. Jackson State 7-13 on third down, Southern 3-12. That's another difference in this game. Jackson State finished with 2 sacks. They both came basically in one. Southern kind of had to throw the ball. Southern finished with 2 sacks as well. And it's basically this is basically the formula for Southern football this season. Like I said, a good game for Morgan. Ahmad Miller had 101 yards on the ground, averaged 7.2 yards per carry. And he did it on 14 carries. Longest run was only 18 yards. So the explosive runs weren't there for Jackson State, but the consistency of running the football, because that's what you do. Those 4 yards, those 5 yards, those 6 yards, that adds up. And so even though they didn't really have the big runs like they had in some games, they still were able to just pound and pound and punch and get their yardage. And that's the mark of a good team. I mean, they had 3 guys run the ball at least 8 times. So they really, they really were able to get it done with that. But the passing game did it. Rembert 102 on 5 catches and a touchdown. Gardner Jr. 7 catches, 96 yards. Dupree, 5 for 93. That's enough in and of itself. And you got to look at it, man. Two of these guys are guys that most people in the preseason wasn't naming as part of that dynamic group of guys. I mean, both of these guys are proven from last year, so it's not like they nobodies, but they weren't like guys that most outside people was like, oh, look out for these guys. So when you got these kind of guys who produced last year stepping up and making plays, man, this team is like I say, I got to give it to them. This team is always going to be tough to beat, and you have to play your A game against them. If you don't, you're gonna come up short. Ashton Taylor led the defense with 7 tackles. Quincy Ivory had a tackle for loss and a sack. Taylor had a tackle for loss and a sack. Interception was by Salas. Southern was led by Vince Page with 10 tackles. Wallace and Eugene had tackles for loss and sacks. And that's basically it, man. But I'm gonna take a quick little sidebar here because as I get myself back on the screen, I was, last night, you got the emotions of the game, and I really was feeling like I need to get some stuff off my chest. And I was gonna make a show last night, and I knew if I make the show last night, it was gonna really be really, really bad. So I decided to take a little quick sidebar here, man, and get my thoughts out real quick. Um, because from what I saw last night for Southern was definitely not what I heard from Southern. Anybody, I got a lot of, I got a lot of people telling me what they were seeing in practice and this and that, and everything that I heard was not what I saw. If you can't tell me that's not the same offense that they've been running for the previous 3 games, um, previous 4 games, excuse me. No, no running, not much running outside. Basically, just giving the ball to Trey Holly and telling them go do it passing game. Even with another quarterback, still is just not there. Um, I don't even know what to do for this team. You can fire coaches at this point. I don't think that's going to help right now. I don't think any change for Southern is going to help until after the season. Um, and it sucks, man. To be honest with you, you watching teams fight and fight, and you getting 4th downs in good field position to go for it, and you refusing to go for it. Even when you're down by 18, you still don't go for it. To me, that just shows that you don't have any fight in you. This team is a one-half team, and that's just ridiculous. You playing against the defending champs. You talked a lot of shit before the game. You have to back that up. Like I said, I don't care if you do it, but you got to back it up. And like I said, you can't bow out after a half if you trying to every time you on TV or you in the media, you talking about how you hate Jackson State and this and that. Then you need to step up to the plate and do it, man. At this point, I'm really, really just sold on Southern right now, man. I'm just they have a lot to prove. I'm not gonna sit here and forecast where they're gonna finish because this the SWAC and the West is what it is. But this team has not shown any improvement from week 0, and I don't even understand how that's possible. Even bad teams improve in certain areas week to week. And I really can't see that from Southern. Like I said, it's almost like no matter who you put in their quarterback, the offense is still stagnant, still uncreative, still no imagination, and still struggling to score points. Um, so that's basically where I stand, man. Like I said, I didn't want to. Like I said, I was gonna make a video last night, but I knew if I did that, y'all would probably have a good time laughing at me being emotional. But I decided to kind of temper that and sit on it and think on it and drop this here. So I'm about to get back to this recap, man, so I can get this out the way. But I wanted to get that on my chest real quick, man. And like I said, we'll see, man. I hate that. This like the 3rd year I did a video. I did something like this for Southern football, man, in the middle of the season. I'm getting tired of it. So hopefully, man, at some point they get this stuff right and get back to what I said they should do. and maybe one day it'll happen. But with that being said, man, let's get back to the recap, man. We're gonna leave this alone. We're gonna jump back into this and continue on talking about the State Fair Classic. Prairie View picked up a 28-13 victory over Grambling. I said the Panthers have been playing a bunch of close games, and this game wasn't like a blowout. I mean, it's a 15-point win, but it was a honestly, it was a comfortable game when you look at it like through the score. Um, Prairie View went up 7-0 when Tevin Carter had a 2-yard run. Um, Grambling got a field goal in the first quarter, make it 7-3. Uh, Bonner caught a Bonner had an 8-yard run for Prairie View, make it 14-3. Grambling got another field goal with time expiring in the first half, 14-6. That made the halftime score 14-6. Prairie View was scored with 7:50 left in the third when McDowell had a 1-yard run. Panthers go up 21-6. Grambling would get their first touchdown of the game when Jones caught a 16-yard pass from T-Set, 21-13. And then with 2:09 left in the game, Chase Bingman had a 15-yard run for Prairie View to make it 28-13. So like I said, it wasn't like smooth sailing, but I don't really think it was like a super challenging game. And this is obviously whenever you're winning, your other two wins were by single digits. To get a double digit win, it is definitely always a good thing, especially against a conference opponent. And it was a solid game for Prairie View. The run game got it done again this week. 224 on the ground, 37 carries, 6.1 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. Didn't have to do a lot on the air through the air. wasn't really efficient. 11 of 24, 122 yards. But that running game is where it's at right now. 346 yards of offense for the Panthers on the night. Um, they lost 2 fumbles. They fumbled 3 times, lost 2 of them. So that also kind of set the game back a little bit. But Grambling fumbled 3 times as well. They lost 1. Grambling had 3 interceptions thrown in this game, so they really shot themselves in the foot here. Only 105 yards on the ground for Grambling on 33 carries, and this, when all preseason, Coach Joseph did a lot of talking about Grambling, running the ball and running the ball and running the ball, and they threw the ball 43 times in this game and completed 21. Um, they ran it 33 times, but 33 carries, 105 yards, man, that is not a good night for you. 161 yards through the air, like I said, the 3 interceptions, only 266 yards of offense. Um, and they only averaged 3.5 yards per play, so just nothing really was going for Grambling at all. And so this was a solid win for Prairie View. They even won this game going 2-9 on third down. So even with a bad third down conversion rate, they still were able to win this game without too much of a sweat. Um, and they right now they're in the driver's seat. There's still a lot of football left, but right now when you look at the way a lot of these other teams in the division look, and they already done beat 2 of them, I don't want to say you're gonna, I don't want to forecast you to finish there because we always see strange things happen, but they you're at least in a good position. Um, and you got a couple more West Division opponents coming up in the next couple of weeks. So you do have an opportunity if you continue to move forward to put some distance between you and everybody else. Because right now everybody else got a ton of questions to answer about themselves. Like the Grambling, T said 21 of 43 on the night, 161, 1 touchdown, did out of 3 interceptions and 1 sack. Carter 9 of 21 for Prairie View and 98 yards through the air. Bradford had 14 carries for 88 yards for Grambling. Um, he was basically the only offense on the ground. McDowell had 98 yards for Prairie View and a touchdown. Carter had 36 in the touchdown. Bingman had 27 in the touchdown. Bonner 24 in the touchdown. They got it done with multiple guys. I mean, everybody had between their main ball carriers had between 4 and 10 carries, so they can spread the carries out amongst everybody, and they were able to get it done. Um, Knighton led Grambling with 72 yards on 4 catches. Jones led Prairie View with 4 catches for 47 yards. Johnson had 8 tackles to lead Grambling. Uh, Robinson and Aristotle had a tackle for loss apiece. Robinson had a sack for Grambling. And Prairie View was led in tackles by Starling with 11 tackles. Parker had 2 tackles for loss and a sack on the night. interceptions were by Randall, Amo, and Zachary. And like I said, this is what you want. You know what I'm saying? Playing against a division opponent, um, and you haven't really played a really complete game yet. This is close. This is about the best game that they played all season so far. Um, and so it's only up from here. You and this team is still growing. So you're putting yourself in a position to continue to make some things happen, and you're getting there. And you can't ask for much more early in the conference season. You can't really ask for much more than that. Next up is Bethune Cookman picking up a big victory against Alabama A&M, and we talked about this game a lot on Swag Smoke last on Thursday, and we said that this one of them games, Bama A&M kind of had to look out, had to look out for. But I still thought the Bulldogs could come out on top. But Bethune had a great, they played a great game here. They're still not really, getting the stops on defense, but the offense, this is the third straight week that they done scored over 30 points. So, they at least seeming like they finding some offensive rhythm. Defensively, they're still giving up points, but if they can outscore everybody, then that's so be it. But Alabama, got on the board first with a 45-yard field goal before Javon Ross caught a 79-yard pass from Cam Ransom. Uh, Wildcats took a 7-3 lead at that point. Colton Nero will get the Bulldogs back on top with a 2-yard run. They went up 10-7. Javon Ross will have a 41-yard run, but Bethune-Cookman to make it go 14-10 in the second quarter. Frank Pierre will catch a 72-yard pass from Eric Hanley, and that made the Bulldogs take a 3-point lead, 17-14. Pamani Robinson had a 24-yard run for Bethune-Cookman, made score 20-17. Ricky Shaw, a guy that I talked about a lot in the preseason, a wide receiver who transferred in from Wofford, I believe, a 27-yard pass from Ransom, extra point good. Wildcats went in the half with a 27-17 lead right there. But then A&M came out in the second half and retook the lead at 24. They cut the lead down to 3 at 24-27 when Frank Pierre caught a 32-yard pass from Hanley. And then Scott will get Bethune-Cookman back up by 10, 34-24 when Scott had an 8-yard run for the Wildcats. Trevante Abner will get a 1-yard catch for a touchdown for Alabama A&M to make the score 31-34. And then A&M will get a field goal from 19 yards out with 5:58 left in the game to tie the game up at 34. And then with 1:07 left in the game, Scott will get a 26-yard run for Bethune-Cookman. Extra point good. Wildcats pull it out 41-34. That was a very high scoring game. And, really good game for Bethune-Cookman. A&M only 125 yards on the ground, but they did throw for 355, 27-41, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Bethune-Cookman had they had a very balanced game. They ran for 259, they threw for 257. They did have 2 interceptions thrown on the night, but they overcame that. They had 516 yards of total offense on only 60 plays, 8.6 yards per play. They took advantage of every opportunity that they had. And this is a really good game for them. They were 8 of 11 on third down. A&M was 11 of 18. Both teams were able to convert on third down. Defense was just not there in this game. A&M was 3 of 3 on fourth down. Bethune-Cookman had 2 sacks on the night. And for me, we all. I don't want to say we. I'm gonna speak for me. I'm not gonna lump nobody else in there. I was really high on Alabama A&M coming into this game, and I still think that they have a potential to still kind of budge their way into that top 3 because I think FAMU is not going to finish there. But I think kind of put the cart before the horse a little bit in this game. And maybe this team isn't quite where they are. Bar Brown is still out, so maybe that had an effect. But Hanley had a good game, so you can't even really say that. He was 27 of 40 for 355, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. You can't really say that. I think the running game really wasn't there for them this week. And defensively, this probably was the least effective that their defense has been since the Arkansas game. And you're looking at they gave up some yardage and some points to Alcorn, but they had a good defensive game against Tennessee State. And then of course, against Lane, they had a really good defensive game. But this game, Bethune Cookman was able to do whatever they wanted. Ransom 17 or 24, 217, two touchdowns. Did have the two interceptions, but no sacks. Robinson 84 yards on the ground. Excuse me, 78 yards on the ground, one touchdown. Ransom had 69 yards rushing. Ross had 41 yards and a touchdown. Ross also finished with 5 catches for 108 yards. Lorenzo Jenkins, 5 for 75. And so they were able to kind of spread the ball around. They had three guys catch 5 passes apiece. So they knew who they wanted to get the ball to, and they were successful with that. Uh, and they had 200-yard receivers in this game. Pierre and they both from Miles. Uh, Pierre 6 for 156 and two touchdowns. Abner 9 for 102 and a touchdown. Other than that, nobody really did a lot for them. Brown led them with 7 tackles along with Wright and Iverson. Tackle for loss. Brown had 1.5 tackles for loss. Interceptions were by Roberts and Wright. Bethune Cookman was led by Antoine Watts with 13 tackles. Naeem Lassiter had 10. Adrian Hall had 1.5 tackles for loss to lead the defense. Lloyd had a sack. And this is, like a couple years ago, A&M came to Daytona and Bethune was able to run for like 400 yards on them. It's just something about when A&M comes down there. These last couple times, Bethune has really been able to stand up, and they've been, they kind of put themselves in a position where you have to pay attention, and now I have to pay attention because I kind of was, kind of stalling them out because, I was like, well, that fourth quarter against South Carolina State, they had pull their guys, that's whatever. And then whatever Waters, whatever. But this is they just beat an A&T team, A&M team that, I was, really high on. I didn't really have them as like SWAC division contenders, but I thought they were a team, and they still can be a team that can be in that middle of the pack and be a tough out. But this is a good win for Bethune, man. And really now now you're on a 2-game winning streak. You got a tough one coming up next week, but you're still on a 2-game winning streak. I really in the preseason didn't even know if you could get to 2 wins. So you're already there. And now maybe some of the fans, some of the Flames have been fanned a little bit on the hot seat, and now you can kind of move forward. So it was a good win for Bethune Cookman. Not a terrible loss for Alabama A&M, but you still don't want to lose a game like this, especially giving up that many points and that much yardage. So we'll see where the Bulldogs go from here. Next up was a interesting game. I was able to follow it. Basically just scoreboard watch. But Valley controlled this game for long stretches. Um, Before ultimately Texas Southern was able to um, score 16 points in the second half to Valley's 3 and win this game 23-20. Valley, they jumped out to a 10-0 lead behind Marco Javicic 39-yard field goal and a Evans Valcourt 1-yard touchdown run. Delta Devils led 10-0 after the first quarter. KJ Cooper got Texas Southern on the board with a 1-yard run, 10-7 at the extra point. Kerrick Ross caught a 30-yard pass for a touchdown from Josh Brown. Valley was up 17-7, and they led that way up until the 10-minute mark of the third quarter. Um, when they went up 20-7, when Marco Jovic had a 41-yard field goal. And at that point, I was like, Valley looked like they about to blow this game out the water. But Texas Southern stayed the course. Ethan Renfro, 2 touchdowns for the Tigers. One came with 2:44 left in the third quarter. He had a 2-yard run to bring the Tigers up there 20-14. They would get a safety to make it 20-16. And then with 118 left in the game, Renfro will get the winning touchdown with an 8-yard run. And Tigers went up 23-20, and they would go ahead and pull it out by that same score. 145 on the ground for Texas Southern, 48 carries, 3 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. Valley 167 on the ground, 45 carries, 3.7 yards per carry. 176 through the air for Texas Southern. 13 of 21, no touchdown, no interceptions. Valley 249 through the air, 21 of 32. Really efficient game passing the ball. One touchdown, no interceptions. Valley outgained Texas Southern by 95 yards, 416 to 321. 5.4 yard per play for Valley. They had 3 fumbles, they lost one. Texas Southern had 2 fumbles, they lost one. But this is a game that Valley looked like they had it on lock. They were 7 of 15 on third downs. Texas Southern was 4 of 12. They were 3 or 4 on fourth downs. Tigers had 2 sacks. Valley had 1. I thought this would be a game that was like a 3-point, 4-point type game, and it basically was. I didn't think that Valley would control this game for long stretches like they did, but I think this was a good effort for Valley. I think this gives you something to build on. Texas Southern, I still think you kind of moving in fits and starts. I mean, you won, so that's better than losing this game. I don't think you played a great game. You still didn't really pass the ball that great. Your running game was solid. Renfro had 100 yards on the night, and he had 95 yards net on the night and 2 touchdowns. So a good game there. Um, Brown led Valley with 19 carries for 90 yards. Taylor had 10 carries for 50 yards. I know they still, they bringing in Nunez from time to time at Valley, but Josh Brown has to be the guy moving forward at quarterback for Valley. He just opens up a lot of things for that offense because he can move with his legs, and that gives them opportunities to make plays out of nothing. Valcourt and Ross each had over 60 yards receiving for Valley. Ross one touchdown catch. Charlo had 5 catches for 57 yards to lead Texas Southern. Um, Defensively, Charles George had 13 tackles for the Tigers. Michael Akins, 4 tackles for loss and a sack. Really good game for him there. Um, and you need the defense to come up and make those plays for you to help you out in games like this. Khalil Hunter, 7 tackles for Valley. Grant, 7 tackles also. Uh, Adonis Jackson had 2.5 tackles for loss for Valley. Also, Douglas Franklin had 2 tackles for loss as well. And if Valley can continue to play a competitive style of ball week in and week out, they will win a couple games. But they still, they still have to have, they still have to kind of continue to grow and put some things together. Um, but they had a solid effort in this game. They just couldn't get the offense going in the second half, and that ultimately is what hurt them. The last game, in this game, man, honestly, I picked Alcorn to win this game, and you can't, this is not a shot at Pine Bluff, but you can't lose this game. When you look at these two teams coming into this game, Pine Bluff was 1-3, but I mean they were 1-2, and Alcorn was 0-3. But you felt like Alcorn should be in that, should be the favorite. A lot of talk in preseason about Alcorn being disrespected, and they haven't shown that, man. And at some point, similar to Southern, at some point you are what your record is. And so right now you're 0-4, so you're 0-4 team. I mean, you can turn things around. It's not impossible. You can turn things around, but at this point, you do have to start to do some searching because coming off of a bye week, um, and you have another offensive effort where you don't really put up a lot of points. The defense gave you enough to win. You should even given up 24 points, you probably should still beat this team. But you're just not really getting it done. Pine Bluff jumped up 3-0 on a Trey Griff 30-yard field goal. Kyle 24-yard pass from Tolbert, extra point no good. Alcorn led 6-3. Jalen Jennings 19-yard run to put Pine Bluff up 10-6. Jacorian Sewell will get a 33-yard run for Alcorn to make the score 13-10 at the extra point. Pine Bluff will get a L.S. Stewart 22-yard pass from Christian Peters, makes score 17-13, and that will be our halftime score. Third quarter, Alcorn will get another touchdown from Sewell, this time for 5 yards out. Braves went up 20-17 at that point, and then Christian Peters a 1 yard run for Pine Bluff to give them the lead at 24-20, and they would hold on to win by that score. Alcorn run game offensively, like I say, they they did a lot in this game offensively, but they could not score. They ran for 272, 38 carries, 7.2 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. The run game is there. 207 through the air, 15 or 30, 1 touchdown. They did have an interception. But that's 479 yards of offense. You won every you won, you won the total offensive battle, you won the rushing game battle. You didn't, you only had the one turnover. There's not a lot to point to that this should be a loss for you. You did have 12 penalties for 106 yards, but Pine Bluff had 13 for 108. So, that cancels out. Golden Lions ran for 140 on the night, 2 touchdowns. They threw for 323, going 20 or 32. Had 1 touchdown, no interceptions, no turnovers for Pine Bluff. Alcorn 5 or 13 on third down. Pine Bluff 6 or 14. 1 or 2 on fourth down for the Braves. 0 or 3 for the Lions. Only 1 sack in the game that came from Pine Bluff. Tolbert 15 or 28 on the night, 207, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 1 sack. Peters 20 or 32, 323, 1 touchdown, no interception, no sacks. This is his best game at Pine Bluff this season. Sewell ran for 225 and 2 touchdowns on 23 carries, averaged 9.8 yards per carry. That's a tremendous game, man. Win or lose, that's just a tremendous game on the ground. But it's a shame that that went down in a loss. Um, Jennings had 18 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown to lead Pine Bluff. Kareem Burke, 6 catches, 102 for Pine Bluff. Kyle 3 for 79 and a touchdown to lead Alcorn. Stamarion Edwards, 9 tackles for Alcorn, 1 tackle for loss. Pine Bluff was led by Hilliard with 11 tackles. Cagle, 1.5 tackles for loss. He also had a sack, and interception was by Williams. So you don't want to downplay Pine Bluff picking up a big conference win. I've said all preseason, Pine Bluff has to win away from home. The last couple years, any win they've gotten has been at home. So to get a conference win away from home against a divisional opponent, is that's big. And again, this was another team that I other than like the Lincoln and Westgate Christian games, I was like, I don't know who Pine Bluff gonna get a victory over. Now they have a win, so they have some momentum. They're on a 2-game winning streak. They got some confidence going. They still, they have some pieces. Their defense is, they didn't give up points, but they gave up a ton of yards. Against other teams, they might be able to cash those yards into points, but they were able to win this game by hook or by crook. And when you're at that position, you take them how you get them. I'm not slamming the door on Alcorn. Of course, it's a disappointing loss, but it's only the first conference game. I don't think nobody's going undefeated in the West. So you still have opportunities. You still got 4 divisional games in front of you. But your margin of error is slipping at this point, and you need a win to get confidence more than anything else at this portion of the season. So, um, you really have to get right. And looking at the schedule for next week, week 6, Prairie View comes to Alcorn, so you go from losing to Pine Bluff to having to play Prairie View, who is right now the hottest team in the division. That becomes an even tougher game. It's not impossible, but that becomes an even tougher game for you, and even more important game because you can't go 0-2 in division, especially with a loss to the division leader at this point. Also, we have Alabama A&M taking Alabama A&M hosting playing Jackson State in Mobile, Florida A&M and Valley in Atlanta. Bethune-Cookman at Alabama State. I think that's the Hornets homecoming. And you have Pine Bluff at Texas Southern. So Southern and Grambling are off this week, which Grambling didn't have a bye week yet. Southern had a bye week. Now they got another one. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they come off of that bye week. But that's our week 6 schedule. First weekend of October, which is the best month in the world. So definitely looking forward to SWAC play. You know, it's still too early to call things separation Saturdays. It's too early for that. But we're a couple weeks away from that. Um, you know, teams can start to kind of get their hand on the car door to get into the driver's seat, but you know, nobody's really in there yet at this point. But with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC Seawells signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.